Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Good Journeys Tarot. Today, I will be talking about the card I've been studying all week, the Emperor. But before we get into that, I'm just going to share a little bit about what's going on and what's coming up here at Good Journeys Tarot that you can look forward to. So, first of all, you'll notice that I have been posting videos on Wednesdays, basically VRs to other people, as well as some hashtags that I've created myself. I've got enough of those probably to go through the end of October already, and we'll try to continue to work on those. Some of the ones that are coming up include my bedside table, which is a VR to Simon at the Hermit's Cave, and then Hearth and Home decks, which is a VR to Boho Tarot. You'll see over here where I'm working on another hashtag about guidebooks, which will be forthcoming. And just this past week, I posted my own hashtag, cards that just don't work for me. Also coming up here on Good Journeys Tarot on September the 21st at 9 p.m. in the United States Eastern Standard Time, I will be having a conversation with Nina from Shuffle Tarot live here on YouTube. So please do join us for that event, whether you're in Australia or the United States. It'll be evening here and morning there. Unfortunately, it'll be the middle of the night in Europe, so perhaps we'll have less viewers from that area during the live, but it will be posted and you'll get to enjoy it afterward. We'll be talking about our tarot practices in general, as well as the Thoth, which is something that she and I both have been focusing study on over the last several months. And she has a series of videos that she has done related to that system. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about our friend, the Emperor. And I want to say our friend, the Emperor, because this is a card that many people have a automatic revulsion towards for several reasons. One is that it is often associated with paternity, and many people do not have great father figures or relationships with a father, or for that matter, they don't have a masculine parent, right? Specifically masculine parent, right? Though they have parents who may fill those roles. The other thing is that you intentionally probably have an aversion to this because of something that Waite did himself, and one of his beliefs about this card. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. As I like to do, I want to share some of the cards from my collection, as well as cards that I found on Pinterest that I found interesting as I began working with the Emperor. So many decks will attempt to do a version of the Rider-Waite-Smith image, such as this one from the Slow Tarot. I think it's a beautiful updated version of that Emperor, with the ram and the mountain in the background, the red sky. It is very beautiful. It captures that kind of energy that Waite had in his deck. Here in the Fyodor Pavlov, you get a lot of the same imagery. However, it's a much softer, less harsh depiction, right? A man who's in touch with all of himself, not just the harsh parts, the controlling parts that come across sometimes in the RWS version. In many pagan decks, you will see this card replaced by a more hunter type image. Here we have the horned god as number 4. In some decks, it's the Lord or Lady. I love this depiction. I can totally relate to the stag as the masculine energy and as the dominant force in a card like this. So, and it doesn't hurt that he's just gorgeous. A lot of cards will try to modernize it, and such as with the Saucerabito here, you see a businessman depicted. And also here in the Urban Tarot, a perhaps community leader or businessman speaking. And then you have cards that move away from that imagery altogether. You'll see that many times in decks that are primarily feminine. In this case, in the Hip Chick Tarot, it was renamed to Structure. And we'll chat about why people make these changes in just a moment, and whether or not that's really appropriate in the tarot. This one from the Spacious Tarot. Why I can never remember the name of that deck is beyond me. It's actually a red flower. It's gorgeous. I love this card as a depiction of the Emperor. And then there are those that I find on Pinterest that are really interesting. The first one here being from the R Black Tarot. A gorgeous image with those basic symbols that we've come to associate with this card. The symbol for Mars, which is a heavy influence on this card, which is the representation of Aries there in the ram. And then we also have the Ankh, that representation of the key of life. The fact that this being understands life and death, okay, and has worked through those principles. The next one is from the my poor brain. I'm forgetting the name of this deck. I do apologize. But it is a kind of apocalyptic depiction of an emperor, the one who is protecting his family in a crisis. A very dramatic and harsh style image, which is something that we tend to equate with that weight image as well. And then this is the Forager's Daughter Tarot. I love this depiction again, the use of the stag as a symbol there on the rocky crags in the forest as a representation of that emperor imagery. So let's talk a little bit about why we find this card so difficult. And it's because of Waite himself. In her book, The 78 Degrees of Wisdom, which as I'm reading it now, which I'd read a long time ago, despite my problems with it initially, Rachel Pollack explains why we find this card so difficult. And that is that the Emperor was actually there. The viewpoint of Waite was that social structure has limited value. And so him and his followers kind of embrace this idea. So his depiction of this card is intentionally harsh. It has that desert kind of feel to it, depicting that kind of overbearingness of societal structure on people. But this is something that you don't see in all earlier versions of the tarot. Most of them depict the emperor as God or the divine on earth. So more an idea of a just and merciful creator than something that's forced upon us. And so that's why when you see people color the Boda tarot, and you read Paul Foster Case, I think I got that right again, you find that it's not quite such a harsh imagery. And that's why when I recolored this image, I chose to remove some of the red and some of the harshness from the image. This is much more reminiscent of how you would see a Boda tarot deck colored. You would have green grass, you would have a blue sky, you would have the emperor dressed in the cloaks of royalty. You'll see here, I've got him like a purple under garment, and then I tried to do two different colors of red for the rest of his outfit, depicting the difference between his cloak and his clothing, but they came out pretty much identical. And the emperor is associated with Aries, and Aries is the bringer of spring. As a cardinal sign, it is that launch into spring from winter. So, in that aspect, you can understand why it may be kind of a barren landscape in the Waite Smith image. However, as the bringer of spring, you think to yourself, well, I should be bringing in some of that green that comes with the spring as well. And that's why I decided to depict the image in this way, because I don't have the same view of societal structure and order as Waite does, or as other tarot creators in the past have had. I view it more as the ideal depiction of the um, dominant or controlling aspect of our personalities. There is a need for societal structure, for order in society, so that we can all live harmoniously, at least in my opinion. And so that has colored my understanding of this card in a much more positive light than it ever has before. I'm so glad that I read that little snippet in her book. And this is a case where I feel like it's okay to migrate from the Waite Smith imagery, because it was colored by their own beliefs about societal structure. And that was not always the case with the tarot in the past. So this card is not just about societal structure, but also about your own authority. When you see this card, is this a place where you need to be exercising your authority more strongly? Or is this a place where someone else is exercising authority over you in a positive or negative manner? It could be either. While the tendency is to see this card as negative or shadowy because of the way Waite had it depicted in the deck, um, by Pamela Coleman Smith, this card is more about someone who has gained the thought, the intellect, the reason to make good use of their that which they have been given dominance over. So this is about stewardship as much as it is leadership. It's not just about jurisdiction and government, but it is about providing stability in your life, in the life of others, in the situation that you're reading about. However, there are some shadow aspects of this card. There are things that are difficult with this card. Sometimes it is actually about loss of power. Hi, Regina. Let me know if you have any thoughts. Sometimes it is about loss of power. Sometimes it is about a person who is power hungry, and that can be you as much as anyone else. It can be about a sense of lack of security. And I think that is how most people immediately react to the Waite Smith image, is because it's so harsh, it's so desert filled. People immediately have this negative response to it. They feel insecure that someone is trying to be forceful upon them, when in fact this card is about so much more. This is also about the hard work that goes into getting to this position in life. As I said before, it's about the intellect, the knowledge, the wisdom that's been gained in order to rule over your domain, whatever that might be. And so let's look at some of the symbols in the RWS card. I apologize for my puppy. And we're going to look at the one that I recolored. Some of those important symbols, of course, are the ram's heads, which we'll see on the corners of the throne here, as well as on the emperor's cloak. The ram's head being a reminder of Aries, of the boss in this situation, so to speak. Hi, Strength Reverse. I welcome you guys' comments. to share with everybody as well. You'll see that he is wearing armor. He has fought long and hard to get where he is. He also is protected from that which might be attacking him to some extent. The mountains are there representing the hard work, the endurance that it took to get to this place of authority at this time. The Ankh of Life there, represented as a scepter, representing life and death, that mastery of understanding over life and death. And so, all important symbols. You're going to see there the globe, which represents his authority to rule. This card is will personified. So it's just not about society and those ruling over you, but this is also about your will, your ability to control your situation that you are reigning over. In the Waite Smith version of the card, you'll see on the crown there are alternating colors of gems. There are notes in some resources which indicate there should be 10 on here, 5 in the front that we see, 5 in the back that we don't, which represent the tree of life, and the alternating colors representing the marriage of the feminine and the masculine. There is this hint that the emperor is married to the empress, though it's not a direct correlation. There is a relationship nonetheless, whether they be married or not. This card is associated differently depending on what system you're studying, with either He, which is the Hebrew letter for window, or Tradi, which is the Hebrew letter for fishhook. Now, in my own study of the tree of life and the one that I work with, it is with He, which is window. This is your vision for leadership. This is you looking out at all of the things that you control and making good judgment and decision moving forth. This card represents in alchemy sulfur, hence all of the orange and red, that kind of dry feeling in the card for the Waite Smith card itself. And historically, this is about authority coming from the divine, hence the using the key of life, and also the in some decks you'll see crosses, or you might even see a light where his face is, rather than it being a face, it being the unseeable God, right? So to speak. So let's take a look at the card that I depicted after having done all of my study, and what it looks like. So my goal was with this to try to modernize it a little bit without removing any of the imagery that I felt was important to this card. And so I had never really given any thought to what an emperor might look like if I were to create one prior to this. This is a card with which I've struggled, and after I talk a little bit about this card, I will talk about something that happened this week in my working with that card. So here you're going to see again the mountain represented. Again, like several modern day decks, a businessman. I use the key of life, the Ankh, as a lapel pin to keep that imagery going, as well as a staff, which has the ram's head on it to remind us of that Aries energy. And I also painted the shirt red because I wanted to, keep some of that red in the card, remind us of that energy, that fire that is associated with this card. I did depict it as green, specifically evergreen trees there as we transition into spring with Aries. And I kind of put the little Mars symbol up there in the corner as kind of the sun, as a reminder of the influence of Mars on this card. Typically, we get so focused on that Mars energy, that kind of soldier dynamic, or energy, that we forget about the positive aspects of this card, but that it is there. Mars is a heavy influence on the card, and hence why Waite did it the way he did, in addition to his own concerns over societal structure. So I was talking about how I've grown from studying with this card. So this week I did a series of readings for different things. In one particular reading, an oracle card had come up, and it was from the Poissus Tarot, Poissus Oracle. I apologize, and let me just share that with you real quick. Was this card, which is the wound card from the Poissus Tarot and Poissus Oracle. I'm going to keep saying that wrong over and over again as I try to navigate here. Oh, that's interesting. In Jeopardy's Jeparitze, the emperor is called War. Yeah, and that's definitely not an imagery that I think I could relate to in the tarot archetypes. But interesting. So again, I had come up with this card wound, and I couldn't figure out why. The next day, I was doing another reading, and this same card came up, and I drew a second card to see what it was about, and the sovereignty card here came up. And that sovereignty card, while here depicting kind of body sovereignty or individual sovereignty, immediately connected with me as the emperor, which I had drawn earlier in the day as my card for the week to study. And so I realized that this is probably an opportunity for me to heal. So without going into too much detail, I have a person that I'm not directly dishonest with. I tend to hide things from, and everyone around them knows all of these things, but they don't. And I really felt like that was kind of like hindering our relationship. And so this week I began working with that person, who happens to be my father, who I've typically associated with the emperor, which made it a difficult card for me a little bit, even though he's a great guy, and he is very supportive of me. We haven't always seen eye to eye. And so it helped me to start working on some of that and being more honest with him, and telling him the things that other people know that I fear that he's going to hear, even though I haven't talked to him about. But the biggest thing for me about the study of the emperor is I've always been worried about removing too much of the things in the tarot that bother me, because I didn't want to change the meaning of the cards. But as I'm studying some of the cards, particularly say this card, I'm finding that Waite himself put some things into the cards that were specific to his feelings about life and the universe. And now those things kind of weigh on us when we look at those cards. In particular, this particular card, it has always been difficult. I see so many people wanting to change it and wanting to alter it. And there's a good reason for that. Waite's view of the masculine or dominant energy and the structure of society is different than what some of us might have. And it's different than how this card was depicted in the past. And I think that by studying individual cards in depth this way, it really can open up our mind to understanding them better. And in this case, I think this is a card where it's completely legitimate to update and improve for today, based on its true meaning and not just the meaning that Waite gave this card when Waite created the deck with Pamela Coleman Smith. So, Amy, Regina, either of you have any other thoughts about the Emperor you want to share or that I can share with people? I appreciate you guys being here. And next week, I am going to be studying the Six of Wands more in depthly. This is Jupiter in Leo. So this is pride in your success, which I'm going to be looking at more closely. This is another card which I don't believe, if I look in my trusty little notebook here, I ever had a meaning for. Let's take a quick look. Oops. Yeah, so I've never had an image for it. I've never taken any notes on it. So this will be starting from scratch. Absolutely, Amy. I've actually studied the Emperor several times because I wanted to better understand it, but also because I felt like my adversity to it was linked to issues with my dad, right? And not necessarily to the card, but it turns out it actually is this card. The card was created to evoke this response. And it takes away to me some of the other connotations of this card, which is why I altered it when I did it. And yeah, definitely can depend on when it's around it, like every other card. Absolutely. Um, many of us do link it to our provider or our father, the one who, especially to the person who was responsible for our discipline, right? Growing up or our discipline in society. And so I think that's why we're a little bit like, ooh, that card, when we see it come up. Yes, and so for a lot of people, yes, the Hierophant also evokes this to a point. And so that's another card that we'll be trying to approach from a more positive light. And we'll see how we can do that without changing the archetype, right? I think that's the important thing. There are archetypes here for a reason, and sometimes if we change them too far, they cease to be that archetype, right? Definitely a card that can breed animosity. So I am looking forward to looking at this card this week, growing and learning more about it. It's actually a very busy time here at Good Journeys Tarot. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, if you missed it, I am posting a series of hashtags over the next month or so. VRs to other people, as well as some that I've created. You'll see a stack of guidebooks right here for one I'm working on. And also on the 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be doing a live with Nina from Shuffle Tarot. We'll be talking about our tarot practices in general, as well as the Thoth and whatever else comes up as people ask us questions during the live. We tried to do it at a time where people in the US would still be awake. And people in Australia would have gotten out of bed. So it's kind of hard when we're 12 hours apart, but we're making it work. And we're looking forward to that. Another thing that's happening is I am currently taking a class with Mama Gina, aka Gina Lamont, on Kabbalah over the next 6 weeks. And I'm busily putting together a panel discussion class for a upcoming convention on tarot and a topic specifically related to that convention. It's not actually a tarot convention. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm debating on whether I'll record that and post it here on YouTube for those of you who would be interested in that content. It's not my typical content, even though it is tarot related. So I do want to thank both of you for coming today and spending some time with me talking about the Emperor. It sounds like many of us have the same feelings about this card. We just have to learn to look at it from all directions when we see it in our readings. Until next time, everybody, good journeys.